What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So I'm doing something a little different today. So clearly, I do a lot of author interviews, but it's Blogger Appreciation Week. I mean, it's not month or year like it should be, but it's a week. We get a week. We'll take it. So I'm going to start interviewing some bloggers. It won't all be this week. It'll just kind of be starting off, and then we'll kind of see how it goes. But today I am joined by Nick Borrelli. So Nick runs the blog Out of This World SFF, where he writes fantasy and science fiction reviews. He hosts cover reveals, interviews, and giveaways, takes part in book tours, like the Storytellers on Tour book tours, and other tomfoolery. But Nick, how you doing today?
Good, man. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for coming. So Nick and I would say we go way back. I mean, we go back a couple of years, but we've been pretty good friends on the Twitter for a good little while, and we talk to each other pretty often about books and Twitter drama and the book community itself. But it's always fun just to kind of get his take and kind of go back a little bit back and forth on stuff. But honestly, it's great just to have somebody kind of bounce ideas off of. But Nick, it's so awesome to finally be able to put a face and a voice to the name. Granted, you can only do so much with a Twitter profile pic. So, so just kind of want to start off. Tell me about yourself. Tell me, growing up, going through school, kind of how you got into reading, and then maybe at what age did you find reading to be your thing?
Sure. Well, I was always kind of a reader. Growing up in school, I grew up in Philly, so in a row home, and we had this huge Gothic, like cathedral looking library at the end of our block. And I used to spend most of my Saturdays there and would read like choose your own adventure books were my thing back then. I don't know if you know what those are, but they're kind of cool. And I would read like mystery stuff and whatnot, but it wasn't until like I was like about 13 that I discovered sci-fi and fantasy. I was kind of in the big section of the library and pulled out this book by Isaac Asimov and read it and probably destroyed it in like a week and was like, wow, this is my genre, man. This is what I want to read from now on. And so from there I picked up the classics like Rendezvous with Rama and Dune and eventually just devoured all of that stuff. So it's really weird because when I first started reading it was mostly sci-fi. Mm-hmm. And since then I lean more fantasy, which is weird. My reading tastes have kind of changed, but I still love sci-fi. It's just I read more fantasy now for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, I got a job at a bookstore, in my early 20s, and they put me in the sci-fi fantasy section. That was my section to maintain its shelf. I dropped to my knees and I was like, wow, it's like the gods are smiling on me, and so, and at Borders at the time, it was so cool. They would give you like a $300 credit limit, in-store credit limit to buy stuff. So I maxed mine out like a week with books, and so in fact, I had it maxed out when I left there 5 years later, and they had to take that money out of my last paycheck. I mean, I just kept it maxed. Every month they would deduct $30 from it, and I would just buy 2 more books. And so, yeah, I mean, I've always it's been in my blood. And, I think much like you, at a certain point, I needed a way to talk about it, and I needed an outlet for it. So, a blog was just a natural extension of it, really. I just not many people in my social circles after I left the bookstore read. So I would read this amazing book and try to talk about it, and really didn't have anybody to talk to about it. So started a blog, and rest is history.
I'm kind of the same as you. I don't know if everybody kind of comes to it that same way, but I feel like a lot of people do that. They find that reading is really enjoyable and they want to be able to talk to other people about it, but not a lot of people around them read. And, you always see those polls like men don't read anymore, which is completely false. It's just, you got to find where they are. And social media is definitely a way to do that. And starting a blog, while it's really difficult to get any kind of traction on it, is a way to do it. And that's kind of what I did. I mean, I had my parents to kind of talk to about books, but like my dad, he reads fantasy and he reads science fiction, but like he's a little bit slower of a reader, doesn't quite like, he just goes, "Oh, this is really good," and then just goes to the next thing. Like he just like doesn't have any in-depth conversations about it. And then my mom, like we can sit there and talk about thrillers all day, but at the same time, like I read a lot more fantasy than I do anything else, kind of like you do now. But yeah, it's interesting because I never really thought about that way. Is, I kind of came into blogging not really intending to come into blogging. It was just kind of a, hey, I think you'd be really, really good addition to this blog that I'm running. So why don't you come in and write some book reviews? I'm like, well, my book reviews are crap, but sure. if you just need to fill some space, why not?
Yeah.
So, what age, I guess, were you when you really like found like, okay, I'm just gonna read all summer and like maybe I'll go outside once or twice.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. So it's kind of a late bloomer. I would say, like I said, when I started working at Borders, it really kind of became more of a passion than it ever was. I would just, go wherever I could to read. I would go to a park. I'd take books with me to the doctor's office. And I mean, I'm the same now. I mean, I can't leave the house without my Kindle or something. If I know I have to be waiting for at least 5 minutes somewhere, I'm bringing my book. And if I don't have it, I know I've heard a lot of people say this, and it's true. It means it's what we are. Like I feel naked without my book, or something to read. If I go out, I have to have it, because if I don't, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what do I do? I don't know what to do, right? I mean, I could get 5 pages read, and when you have a family and you're finding that out now, your time becomes limited, and you'll read whenever you can and wherever you can. So you try to steal minutes here and there. So, but yeah, back then, single, I just read constantly. People would be like, "Yo, let's go to the bar," and most of the time I'd be like, I'm just gonna finish up this book. I'll meet you later or whatever. So yeah, I mean, that's really it. My early 20s, and it's just been like that ever since.
I gotcha. Yeah, my wife is, we've had the conversation multiple times of when our daughter goes to sleep, I'll be sitting there trying to get some reading done, and she goes, "Oh, what can we watch this show or something?" I go, "Oh, Mama's done. This book is so good." She goes, "You say that about every book," and I go, "I don't read crappy books. It just isn't a thing I do." I was like, if you ever hear me say, right? I got to finish this book, gosh, I'm really struggling through it. I'm like, please slap me, because clearly I'm out of my mind.
No, I totally relate. I'm with you.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I kind of wish that I had taken advantage of all the free time that I had when I was younger to read. I mostly just play video games. So like most of like my high school and even like most of elementary school, like I was playing, in 64, and I would get like the new system that came out every year. And then I played a lot of Xbox Live in high school. So instead of reading a book, I was playing Halo and trying to rank up in doubles. Where I'm now, I'm like, gosh, it's kind of one of those things like you kind of wish you had stuck with a sport because you feel like you could have made it,
No,
so now
I'm reading time that I missed out on, trust me. And I kick myself all the time.
Yeah, I'm like there's like 20 years that I'm like I didn't dedicate to reading because I hated it so much in high school because of the summer reading that we had to do. And yeah, now I'm looking back going, oh my gosh, all these series that I could have already read, now I've got to catch up on because now they're coming back because new readers are reading them, they're making shows about them, making movies about them, or they're just doing the new anniversary editions. And people are like, oh my gosh, have you read this? I'm like, oh my gosh, no, I haven't. It was actually written before I was alive. Oh man. So we'll skip that one. You kind of already gone over that one. But people always say like, this is my favorite author or this is my favorite book. But a lot of times, those do go hand in hand, but then you can also have like a favorite book by an author, but not have them as your favorite author. So if you're catching my drift on that, like who who would have been like a couple of your favorite authors, and then who would have been a couple of your, or what would have been a couple of your favorite books?
Okay. So I think everyone knows of my affinity for Tad Williams.
No, I didn't
Tad.
know. Do you have an affinity for Tad Williams?
Oh, yeah. Ask other David. He'll tell you. um, he knows. I incessantly talk about Tad Williams. Tad was kind of like the first author where I was like, I have to read everything by this guy. And I picked up the Dragonbone chair, and I just fell in love with it. I was like, wow, this is amazing. It was, talk about epic. It's epic. It really is. And there's just, they're very big books. They're very long, but to me, like, as long as they're interesting, and his books always are, his characterization is amazing. He writes incredible dialogue. His world building is just off the charts. And he's flexible. He writes so many different genres and equally incredible. Like, I mean, he does high fantasy. He's got a cyberpunk series, the Otherland books, which are great. He does urban fantasy. He's got the Bobby Dollar books, which are urban fantasy. He's just amazing to me, and always been my favorite. We'll read anything by him whenever it comes out. We'll drop everything. My absolute favorite. Who else? Janie Wirtz is really a big favorite of mine too, and I think there's a common theme there too, because she writes many, like, much the same as Tad does. Really long books that are really involved. Different timelines, different, just really, and like, you really have to think about what you're reading. You can't. It's not one of those things where you can read with the TV in the background.
Yeah.
Love her stuff.
But yeah, I know Blaze is like reading through her big series right now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's just loving everything about
it. Oh my God, it's incredible. It's incredible. And I don't think she gets a lot of the, props she deserves. She also co-authored a series with Raymond Feist. It's like a side series to his Rift War series.
Mm-hmm.
It's told from the other side, and she co-wrote it with him. And that's also phenomenal. So, yeah, I just love her stuff. As far as favorite books go, I mean, let's see. I love Gene Wolfe, The Shadow of the Torture. That book's incredible. Really dark, sort of post-apocalyptic. Canticle for Leibowitz is another one, and I've talked about that one before, by Walter M. Miller Jr. Very good. It's kind of like another post-apocalyptic one. That's incredible. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty much what I love.
I gotcha.
But, I'm reading a lot of self-pub, so
yeah.
It's on my TBR like crazy. So
yeah. I mean, every time you like turn, that there's a new self-pub book that like either looks good or sounds good and generally is good. But yeah, like you were saying about Janie and even Tad, like I don't feel like they're really talked about even like in the big fantasy groups. Like I know Tad's got a really big following. I mean, I know Janie's got a decent following, but based on just what I'm seeing from Blaze and now hearing from you, I'm kind of just amazed that they don't have just a bigger, every time you go to a fantasy group, it's Erickson, Rothfuss, Lynch. It's the norm,
you're gonna get me in trouble.
You as soon as you enter, Malazan, then you just go to the next thing.
Yeah.
But or sorry, Malazan. I forgot.
Whatever.
Erickson did clarify that for me work on this year. So but yeah, it's so interesting because there's so many great series out there that have even been written in the last decade or last 2 decades that they're just, I guess, don't have the staying power that maybe they should. And I know you're probably getting really excited because Tad's new book was just announced.
It comes out next year.
Gosh, that cover is so pretty.
Yeah, no, I love it. Believe me, I'm there for it.
So you enjoy reading. A lot of people enjoy reading, but not a lot of people review books. What made you decide to start writing reviews?
I mean, basically, just like I said, it's just a need to sort of share with anyone, like what I was feeling after I finished a book. When I left Borders, it was kind of like, when I worked there, it was cool because we had all these people that were like-minded and everybody read, and we would talk about books we were reading in the break room during lunch. We would hang out afterwards and talk about books at the bar. So it was like, it was kind of like that was my tribe, So when I left there, it was kind of like, I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So, I actually didn't start my own blog until later. I reviewed for a couple of other blogs like Fantasy Book Review. I reviewed for them for a while, and Lee was just amazing. Like, I hadn't ever written a review before, and he was like, don't worry about it. He was just like, he's like, come aboard. He's like, write a review. He's like, I'll check it over, and if I think it's cool, I'll publish it. If not, whatever. So I'm really thankful to Lee at Fantasy Book Review for giving me a shot. I reviewed for them for a while. Another website called Fresh Fiction, did some reviews for them, and then was just like, I don't know, it's weird because I think all bloggers go through this. I was kind of burned out, didn't want to do it for a while, and just sort of dropped out. And, after a couple of years, I wanted to do it again. And, it just, the passion kind of came back. And so rather than hook up with another website, I just was like, why don't I just start my own blog, And I also wanted, I felt bad because at times when I reviewed for Fantasy Book Review, some months I'd get 3 reviews done, some months nothing. So I felt like, if I want to do this, let me do it at my own pace. Let me kind of dictate my own schedule, not put so much pressure on myself. And I feel like that was the greatest move ever because, I think having a single person blog now for me works best.
Yeah.
Because, especially with a family, especially with like a lot of time constraints, I can post when I want, dictate what books I want to read. I don't have them chosen. I can pick them myself. And, it just works better. So when I started Out of This World SFF, it kind of started out slow and then kind of gained more traction. And then when I joined Twitter and hooked up with all these other bookish people, you included, it kind of really took off. And so, I don't do it for the page views, but it is nice to have, means that people appreciate what you do and like it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it just took off and I'm really appreciative of that. And, it's been quite a while. I don't see myself getting burned out again. And I think that's, that's sort of like a testament to the fact that I kind of don't put so much pressure on myself as I did back then, and the blog works best for me the way it is. So.
Yeah. I feel you on that. And, I do know there are a lot of bloggers out there that do get burnt out. And I think that's part of why we grew so exponentially at the beginning of this year. I just put an open call out and I was just like, do you want somewhere to post reviews besides Goodreads? Do you want somewhere to talk about books? Because we have a community, but at the same time, like I feel like a lot of people that post on Twitter they're not seen, and a lot of people really deserve to have at least some kind of sense that they're being heard and their stuff is being seen. So I was like, well, let's try to open a platform where that can happen. And it also, I felt a lot of pressure for the first 2 years running my own when I started Fanfiatic, because I'd had a little bit of pressure for that first year when I was on Book Nest, because it was kind of a try to get X amount every month if at all possible, because we want to have seamless streaming content every single week. And I'm like, gosh, it's just a lot. And then you join on Spiffbo and you're trying to do that as well on top of all the arcs that you're trying to read. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And then I started my own blog, and I was still trying to emulate that somewhat. Of course, I didn't do Spiffbo because I was like, I can't do this by myself and do all that.
Commitment, man. 2 years. Commitment.
And so I was like, okay, what makes me happy? And kind of like you mentioned, you don't do it for the page views, you don't do it for the likes and the comments. Granted, they're nice. It's great to see that people are actually taking the time to come check it out. But, if you get bogged down in numbers, you're going to be really disappointed in the end of it, because not everybody makes it. There are some that make it. And yes, it would be great if everybody made it like some people do. And it's just, It's just
Right.
not in the cards for everybody. And I've had to come to terms with that a few times. I mean, even this past year that, I sit there and I look at other blogs or other, YouTubers, and I go, man, like, why can't I get that kind of success? And I'm like, you know what? It's because you're not doing it for success. You're not taking
Right.
hours and hours to edit and all this other stuff and make it look great. Like, you're literally just doing what you said you were going to do.
Yeah.
So, and so, yeah, it's nice to be able to go, I'm going to read this book. If I review it, I review it. If I don't, I go to the next thing. I can always fall back on a cover reveal if I need to, or I can just write a post about what I read this week. So people do like TBR pile posts or what I'm reading for this month and how they did in that month. So there's a lot of ways that people that are doing their blogs individually, like yourself, can kind of make it through a week without still not feeling that pressure, which I think is nice. I just decided to put a bunch more people on my blog because I didn't want to feel pressure, period.
What do you have, like 50 now? I mean,
27 actually, including myself. I know it's a lot. And I asked all the other guys and girls, I was like, so I'm thinking about opening the gates again. They're like, why? I was like, I don't know, just because. I was like, they're like, you want to take over the world, don't you? I was like, I mean, not really, but maybe.
I don't know how you do it, man. I really don't.
It sounded like it was going to be a lot when I first decided to do it. And then getting everybody kind of like in and on the same page took like a week. It didn't take that long. And now it's just like I'm talking to everybody on Twitter, but they're all in one DM and they all just happen to write on my blog.
Right.
Now, Blaze still has his blog under the radar. And I know Cassidy was still doing her personal for a little while. But, honestly, I kind of just tell people, do what you want, post whenever you want to, just don't post the same review in the same day and we'll be good. And so I just kind of let it happen. And I think as long as you don't sit there and try to control everything, it's really not bad. And everybody gets along, which is the main thing. If there were people that weren't getting along, we'd have some issues.
Yes.
So tell me about your review style. I know everybody does things differently. Some people write like freaking, page long reviews. Some people write a couple of paragraphs. Some even write a few sentences. What is your kind of style like?
So, I used to be that person that and no one's going to read it. Right. So,
right.
I've kind of adapted my style since the early days, but basically what I try to do is a lot of people take notes. I don't really like taking notes because I feel like it kind of interrupts the reading process for me and it takes out the enjoyment. So what I will do is if something, like, normally I read on my Kindle. So if something seems important to me, I'll highlight it on the Kindle and then just keep reading. And then the cool thing about a Kindle is when you're done, you just go to all your notes. They're all there, everything you've highlighted. And then, I'll just look at that when I'm writing the review. And they're just basically points that I want to hit on. And so it's kind of like an outline, but a few words here and there that I've highlighted that, I'm like, oh, wow, that's important. Let me touch on that, So, that's what I do. And then when I write my review, it's usually like normally the day after maybe that I've read it, sometimes like 5 minutes after I've read it. I like to write my reviews like when they're still fresh, when the end is still fresh in my head. And so I do that. I just, I'll bust it out, throw 4 or 5 paragraphs down, and then I'll do a pass for like continuity, and then I'll do a pass for grammar and spelling. And I'll look at that thing probably about 5 or 6 times before I actually publish it. But yeah, I try to get everything I want to say down, and I don't really concern myself with, how it looks initially. It's just word salad at that point. I just throw everything down that I want to, talk about.
Yeah.
And then I'll edit it into, I'll change words here and there. I'll change sentences to, sort of make a coherent kind of review after that. And that's it. I try to touch on the basic, the world building, the plot, the writing, the characters, anything that stands out to me, and hit on those without getting any spoilers. What I've done now is to avoid spoilers. I used to try to summarize the plot of the book in my review, which I really don't do anymore because I found myself just straying too closely into the realm of spoiler, And so what I'll do is I'll just write the book blurb like from the book before my review, and then write my review. And I figured that's enough of a description of the book that I don't need to, then mention it again in my review.
Yeah.
And so this way I avoid spoilers that way. And then I'll just talk about how I felt about the book and what was strong, what was not. And that's really helped me in avoiding spoilers. And, because that's a big bugaboo these days, people get really angry about that. So yeah, it's not rocket science. It often takes me probably an hour at most to write out a review. And then after that, it's just editing it down,
You do a lot more work than I do, man. I finish a book. I try to get it out in like 20 minutes. I generally so when I first started writing reviews, I kind of did what you did. I kind of talked about the plot and wrote it out as my review, and then had a last paragraph, and then ended it. And I was like, why am I just redoing the blurb when it's right there? That makes absolutely no sense.
Why I start. That's why I start.
And I'm like, clearly I have to have more to say than just saying what the book is about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to kind of hone in, going, okay, so and that's kind of what I've done the past. I guess it hasn't really even been a year. Maybe I'll say maybe the past year. Where I do kind of my blurb that I would if a publisher were to pick it up, here's what they could use. And generally they still use other stuff, the reviews. I'm clearly I'm not as smart as I think I am. But I try to hit it with that. And I feel if I write that well enough, the rest of it just kind of can be whatever. I'll talk about the writing style. If it's a debut, I'll talk about, how I found the writer. Did I find it to feel like a debut? Did it feel like, somebody that's been writing for a few years, that's, got some other stuff under their belt. And then I'll talk about characters, world building, if there's a magic system, if there's, some kind of descriptor, if it's a sci-fi in space, how was it, the sensory detail and so forth in it. But I mean, I think my max is 5 paragraphs. I don't understand why people write reviews that are so freaking long, because I myself will only really pay attention to the first paragraph or two.
Yep.
And usually I'll just look at the rating, which we should probably start putting our ratings under our review. But at this point, I don't really, who cares? Because usually you'll know that, we liked it or not if we post a review and tag an author in it. So.
Yes. And like you said, I don't really, you touched on it earlier. A lot of people are always like, oh, you love everything you read. And it's mostly because I kind of have an idea of what I like and what's going to work for me. I just have this feel, and I know which books that I'm going to avoid because I probably won't like them. Yeah. So there are some negative reviews on my blog, but I'd say for the most part they're positive, and it's because that I don't want to read anything that I think I'm not going to like. You know what I mean? I don't have the time for it, so I really pick my books carefully. Mm-hmm. And that's why the overwhelming majority of my reviews are positive, because the books I read are books that I'm pretty sure I'm going to like. So.
But just watch out though. You'll get those gatekeepers in there. They're like,
you have to
don't listen to him. He only reads 5-star books.
Nick, I'm gonna get in trouble.
I know. I feel like I knew all the buttons to push when I'm talking to you. So.
Don't even get me started, man. Twitter drama. Oh, the same 3 arguments over and over.
I know, man.
How much could we beat this dead horse, right?
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I got to the point where, if I'm not jiving with a book, I put it to the side. Now, if I have told the author or told the publisher, I am definitely going to read and review this book, I will suffer through it if I have to. But I find it a lot harder to write about something I didn't enjoy than I do than something I did enjoy, because I could sit there and gush about a book that I love, but a book that I didn't like, it's really hard to talk about it without just going, I just didn't like it. It wasn't for me. Because there are things that people will like about that, but I'm just I don't want to say it's a waste of time, because it's not, because all feedback is critical to other people finding books, and I've read bad reviews that have made me pick up a book and I've loved. The one I always come back to is I'm Thinking of Ending Things. That book is like so hot or cold depending on who you are, and I think it was like a 3 out of 5 on Goodreads when I picked it up, and I mean it had like thousands of reviews, and I freaking love that book. It's like such a mind trip, and then watching the movie, it's a little different, but it's still good. But it's one of those that you can actually read your front to back and then back to front, and it's 2 completely different stories.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, I generally if I DNF a book, using big terms now on doing Twitter stuff, but I'll generally write like, this wasn't for me, this wasn't my cup of tea. If you enjoy this, you'll probably like it. If you don't like this, skip. Because I have a hard time hurting other people's feelings.
You're saying you don't tag authors in negative reviews, David.
Right. Yeah. And golly, the people that do that.
I just don't get it. It's just
I know.
whatever.
because somebody has to start it every year. That's why, Nick. You can't just let it sit under the rug. Somebody has to pull it out, dust it off, and start it over again. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times like I've just muted like those like kind of listicle type things from people that I don't even know, like I've never read before, because I'm like, this is gonna be the same person that starts it next year, so just go ahead and mute them. And it's really cleaned up my timeline. It's wonderful.
Hey, the mute
most of my timeline is just rainbows and unicorns. It's great.
Awesome.
So who would you say are your immediate TBR toppers outside of Tad and Janie? Who like, as soon as you hear about a book, like, okay, I'm immediately gonna read that when I have it.
Okay. Yeah, and most of them are going to be self-pub indie, because honestly, the last couple of years, I that's been the majority of my reading. That's not to say like Miles Cameron, I'm going to read his stuff all the time, you know what I mean? And so John Gwynn, absolutely. But I'd say as far as like my TBRs, I mean, anything by Michael Fletcher, Clayton Slater, I mean, that was my favorite. Probably tied with my favorite book this year with Legacy of the Bright Wash was Norilska Groans. So I mean, 2 of my favorite reads in both self-pubs. So it just unbelievable. Everyone should read that book. It's phenomenal. I mean, Crystal Matar, obviously, because I said Legacy of the Bright Wash. Mike Shell is one that I'll always read. Oh my gosh, and Justin Travis Call and Mike Shackle. Those 2 series right now are 2 of my favorite current series going right now. So Master Artificer like blew me away. I don't know if you've read that yet.
I haven't. No, I actually just got a signed copy from Justin.
You read the
a little while
first
back.
one, right?
No, I started. I haven't finished it. I made a pledge to myself. So I said, okay, I think I've read all of the books I planned to read early this year. And so now I'm like going back through a backlog of like audiobooks I haven't done. So I've probably finished 5,000 to 7,000 words worth of audiobooks in the past week and a half.
Okay.
And so Justin Call's next. I'm going to redo We Are the Dead by Shackle, because I still haven't finished the second one, and I've told him for like months that I'm gonna read it. I feel so bad. Mike's like one of the nicest guys ever, so he like understands.
Awesome.
But you mentioned Fletcher and Snyder. They actually just made it into the finals in Spiffbo for Spiffbo 7.
That. Well deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. And then actually, I talked to Crystal yesterday. She's gonna kill me in her next book, I think, or at least kill me in a future book. So if you see somebody with the name Wayne dying in one of her next books, that's me.
Oh, I can't wait to read that. But yeah, that Justin Travis Call series, man, just phenomenal. Like,
it starts with Master of Sorrows for
Master of Sorrows and Master Artificer, which,
and it's what, like 7 or 9 books,
pages. Huh?
Didn't he do like 7 or 9 books?
He's going to do it. Yeah, that's apparently
insane.
like a 9-book series or something. But it's that second book took the series to a whole other level. Like I liked the first book, and then I read the second book and was like, okay, all right, I see where this is going. And it was the bad guys are just like take center stage in the second book, and it's phenomenal. I can't say enough about that series.
Awesome. Yeah. It's one of those things like I keep wanting to say, gosh, I want to read that so bad. And like, it just gets like, it's right under the, that book, because that's kind of how my year is going. Like I go, I'm really going to get to this. And then like Shadow of the Gods came out. Oh, I'm really going to get to this. And then Empire's Ruin came out.
Something always.
Oh, I'm really going to get to this. The Pariah came out.
Let me tell you something. When that new Jeremy Zoll book comes out, Blind Space, I'm going to drop everything because I've been waiting for that one. It seems like oh my gosh. Stormblood.
Yeah.
Just blew me away.
Oh, so good.
Such a great book. I'm just like, oh, and I've been waiting for that one. It got pushed a little bit. It was, I think, initially supposed to come out July or August, and now it's like October or November. Yeah. So I feel like when that book comes, I'm going to be like, okay, if I don't have any obligations as far as like book tours and stuff, everything's getting dropped. And I'm just like, that's the book right there. Yeah. That's the one I'm most anticipating right now.
Yeah, I'm going to redo the audio by Colin Mace. He's like one of my favorite narrators. I don't know if you listen to a lot of audiobooks, but he did the one for Stormblood. And yeah, I ever since I saw that cover for Blind Space, I'm like, all right, Jeremy, let's churn and burn. Let's go.
Well, I harass him constantly, so he knows I really want that arc.
So what do you enjoy outside of reading and running your blog?
Right. So mostly I'm a big sports fan. I love Philadelphia sports, as you can see, Philadelphia Flyers. But yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm a Penguins fan.
I blame my dad, man. I'm sorry. I'm 5 years old. It's like he had season tickets. That's it. The rest is history. But
I'll let you have that one.
It's in my blood. So, but anyway, I love cooking. I'm a big cooking guy. Constantly looking up new recipes to make. Even though my kids won't really eat what I make, they just want the same things.
Right.
Pasta and chicken nuggets, but
yep, sounds about right.
It's something that it's like calming, and I like the process of cooking, and it sort of like calms me, and I have a nice beer with me when I'm doing it. So occasional concert, cooking, reading, yeah, that's my comfort zone.
I gotcha. What was it the other day that you and I talked about as far as grilling? Was it that men only talk to anybody else when they're grilling?
Somebody made I don't know, some tweet or something where it was like, oh, men only grill so they don't have an excuse. They have an excuse not to talk to people, or
yeah. I think it was men only talk when they're grilling, and that's when like they have friends around them. And I grill by myself. I have a beer, and generally an audiobook going. Like I don't talk. I don't want. Nobody's ever here to grill with.
I'm a lover. I need to. Yeah, I'm out on the deck. Yeah, I got the music going, or like you said, I don't want anybody to bother me when I'm cooking. Really, I'm just like focused. Like, all right, we'll be ready soon. So yeah, that was totally not a tweet that hit us at all.
Oh no, yeah, that I love this kind of tweets though, because like I'll read it and I go, was it necessary? Like, is that a necessary tweet? Well, but clearly, her husband, does not talk to her when he's grilling.
But I guess my thing about Twitter is sometimes it can tend to get like the generalization is what bothers me a lot. We get a lot of tweets that say these people do this, and it's like, no, it's way more nuanced than that. Okay, all men are not monolithic. We don't all grill so that we can have this cabal of other men to like talk to and like plot and talk about. It's not. It's just
we all don't talk to our wives just in like grunts and growls. I mean, we actually do have conversations.
No, see that's what annoys me the most is the generalization. Now, if you want to like preface it by saying some blah blah, and that's fine. But it's when I see tweets that like just put people in boxes that kind of
when it just says men or women.
I just
it's like that's a lot of people.
Yeah, mute. Sorry. Don't have
But
time
yeah,
for
I'm
it.
I'm kind of the same with you with cooking though. I really love to cook. And my wife has always asked me, like, do you need any help? And I go, no, just watch our daughter, stay out of the kitchen. I was like, I got it. So yeah, headphones in. Half the time it's with a beer because that's the relaxing thing. I can just breathe and I go, okay, I've got everything prepped, counters cleaned off. Like I
Mhm.
really enjoy cooking. We've been doing one of those I guess you would call them like box things. We do Home Chef. So we get like
Yeah.
3 meals a week. And I always enjoy, prepping them and cooking and stuff because it's generally stuff I probably never would have done myself.
Mhm.
Like we were doing like the same, I don't know, 10 meals like every couple of weeks. And then we're like, can we do something else that's not spending $60 going out for two people?
Oh, gosh.
And so I don't know if you ever do that, but I highly recommend Home Chef. It's great. We tried
Yep.
HelloFresh and I
No.
wasn't a fan.
All right,
But
good.
Home Chef is great.
Okay. I'll check it out.
But yeah, I enjoy cooking. But yeah, reading is generally my thing. Besides, spending time with the wife and daughter, and going to the lake. Which, gosh, I wish I could do that more.
Yeah.
I actually set up a office at the lake so I could try to do that more. So I'm hoping once
Fancy.
things like finally start like getting normalized, which is probably never going to happen because we always have some new thing to the pandemic. So hopefully
roll with
happen.
punches, man.
I know.
Crazy.
Well, Nick, man, I appreciate you coming on and chatting today. It's, we can only do so much getting to know each other on Twitter. So it's great to be able to actually have a conversation with you. And everybody that's watching. So Nick runs Out of This World SFF. He's a fantastic follow on Twitter. So I definitely recommend you give him a follow. I'll have his username down in the comments section. And Nick, keep doing what you're doing. Keep killing it and reviewing, especially in indie stuff. We need you as much as we can. And let me know if you ever need anything, man.
David, thanks so much, man. This was so fun. Appreciate it. Anytime you want me back on, I'm here.
All right, man. Sounds great. I'll talk to you soon.
See ya.